The first championship race of 1963 was the Monaco Grand Prix. The team latest drivers were still Jim Clark and Trevor Taylor. BRM had Graham Hill and Ginther. Porsche had withdrawn and Gurney had joined Brabham's team and Bonnier Rob Walker's. Surtees had joined Ferrari and was partnered by Willy Mares. Phil Hill, Baghetti and Bandini were all without a drive. Poor Ricardo Rodriguez had been killed at the 1962 Mexico Grand Prix. McLaren and Mags remained with the Works Cooper team, and Lolas were entered for Trintignant and the New Zealander Chris Amon. Bonnier, now in Rob Walker's Cooper Climax, had previously driven here for Maserati, BRM and Porsche. Unusually for the beginning of the European season, there were very few changes to the cars. This year, Monaco's pits and start line were on the inside road after the gasworks hairpin in order to try to avoid a repetition of 1962's disastrous first lap pile-up. Monaco always attracts its share of celebrity visitors, including from the world of boxing, the ex-world heavyweight champion Ingmar Johansson. Colin Chapman looked happy, as Jimmy had quickly set the time to beat. Clark's Lotus 25 was a brand new car. With no Siroccos and the ATS still not yet ready, there were only 16 cars eligible, so there would not be the usual mad rush to qualify for Monaco. Lap times were set around the 1:35 mark. Louis Chiron, the race director, walked back to the pits, thus signalling the end of the last practice session. And so on Sunday, May the 26th, Betty Walker and Rob's mechanics, Tony and Malcolm, prepared for the race. We saw Jack Brabham, Jim Hall in his splendid Texan hat, and Joe Bonnier in tartan, no doubt in deference to Scott Rob Walker. The BRMs nestled under their covers, watched by Graham Hill. Jim Clark was in top form, whilst Maurice Trintignant gave Betty Walker his autograph. Richie Ginther also signed her programme for Betty. And two of the greats, Nino Farina and Gigi Villoresi, thinking no doubt they made them bigger in our day, Phil Hill without a car could only watch. There followed a parade of anciens pilotes, Tommy Wisdom and Rob Walker. Tony Brooks. Fifi Atarcelin, still with his cap back to front. And he was followed by the gesticulating Teruffi and Villoresi. It was wonderful for me to see that all the anciens pilotes were being driven around in British cars, including the splendid open-sided Mini. Just the job for Cap Ferrat and the Riviera. Al Francis was in the Walker pits with the rest of the team. Innes Ireland awaited the arrival of Prince Rainier and Princess Grace, who, having toured the circuit, took their place in the royal box opposite the pits. Louis Chiron closed the course. And I noticed, particularly at the driver's briefing this year, that many of the drivers are wearing the new style of fuller helmet, and also that many of the colours are very distinctive. Trevor Taylor's yellow, Joe Siffert's Swiss flag, and of course, Innes Ireland's checkered stripe. All the cars got away cleanly, with the BRMs of Hill and Ginther beating Clark off the line. Down to the station hairpin, Hill, Clark, Ginther, Surtees, McLaren, and the rest of the field. Jack Brabham had been lent the spare Works Lotus 25 by Colin Chapman. At the end of the first lap, the order was Hill, Ginther, Clark, Surtees, and McLaren. Siffert's BRM-engined Lotus had already blown up. Clark nipped past Ginther and set off in pursuit of Graham Hill. Bonnier had clutch troubles and was already dropping back. Several times Jim Clark was able to draw alongside Hill, but Graham staved him off. John Bolster looked on as the pit signals went out. Joe Bonnier came in to complain that his revs were going sky high. Hill held the lead from Clark, Ginther, Surtees, and McLaren. Bonnier set off once more. Clark took to the inside at Gasworks and managed to hold the lead. He slowly started to pull away from Graham. Oil from Siffert's blow-up was still causing difficulty. At the station, Joe Bonnier struggled to make up for lost time. And Jimmy Clark now showed us what a fine driver he is, pulling out a 7-second lead. Surtees, now lying third, was chasing Hill's BRM, but this was throwing out oil, misting up Surtees' goggles. Trantignon's Lola was forced to retire after blowing its climax engine. Innes Ireland hit the sea wall after his car jumped out of gear on his way into the corner. Along the harbour front, there was nothing to keep the cars out of the water if they overdid it, as Ascari did some years ago. Thankfully, a rescue boat always patrols nearby. Bonnier was now going very well, but was 3 laps behind the leaders due to his earlier pit stops. Surtees kept Hill under pressure. Ginther and McLaren were 4th and 5th. The rest of the field had already been lapped by Clark, who now had a 16-second lead with 3/4 of the race gone. And then on lap 79, going into the gasworks hairpin, Clark's gearbox suddenly selected 2nd and 4th simultaneously. The wheels locked up, Clark spun off. He was forced to retire. Bad luck after a magnificent drive. This left Graham Hill in the lead. Teammate Ginther was now 2nd. Surtees had been forced to ease off as his Ferrari's oil pressure was failing. Brabham in the Lotus 25 and Maggs in the Works Cooper were running together. Surtees had dropped back to 4th behind the BRM's and McLaren's Cooper. Hill continued to lap quickly, even though he was quite unthreatened. And the BRMs, now in close company, were finally to finish 1st and 2nd. McLaren and Surtees were 3rd and 4th, with Tony Maggs and Trevor Taylor rounding out the points. Graham Hill may have inherited the lead from the unfortunate Clark, but his speed had set a new race record. The world champion greatly enjoyed his lap of honor, and the BRM team enjoyed the continuation of their 1962 successes.